It's the mid-1970s, and Marvel Comics is hitting all the pop culture beats. In bookstores and campuses across America, sword and sorcery is the hot new thing, with the company's Conan and Call adaptations leading the charge. In the cities, martial arts are all the rage, and the House of Ideas is in step with Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, Iron Fist, and other high-kicking heroes. If that's not exotic enough, Stan and company appear to have gone bananas, taking on the popular Planet of the Apes franchise. It was a busy time to be a reader, and you could hardly be blamed for missing a title or two along the way. Astonishing Tales was just such a title. The book was a return to the anthology format originally utilized by Marvel in the early 1960s. The first 8 issues featured the unlikely pairing of Kazar and Doctor Doom, with Doc bowing out by issue 9. Kazar fought on until issue 20, when the book took an abrupt swerve back to the Silver Age, reintroducing it, the Living Colossus. It first appeared in Tales of Suspense 14 and A Tale by Lee and Kirby. Originally commissioned as a piece of communist propaganda by the Soviet Union, the towering statue is instead crafted as an icy rebuke to the system's callous and dehumanizing nature. Stranded alien Kygor, knowing a good thing when he sees it, uses his powerful alien technology to inhabit and animate the 100-foot sculpture, wreaking havoc throughout the countryside. This rampage, having caught his fellow aliens' attention, Kygor is taken back to his home planet, and it reverts to its original inert state. That is, until it returned in issue 20, having been shipped to Los Angeles of all places, as part of some sort of cultural exchange. Can't we just have some more of those nesting dolls, or maybe some vodka? Attracted to the statue, another Kygor slips into the driver's seat and smashes the place up. It's only then ace special effects artist Bob O'Brien enters the mix, creating a larger, more powerful statue for the alien to inhabit. When the Kygor jumps ship, O'Brien blows up the second it, destroying the alien consciousness with it. An exciting tale to be sure, but what happened to the original stone behemoth? Well, readers only had to wait 14 years to find out. Astonishing Tales 21 was written by Tony Isabella, with art from longtime Marvel creator Dick Ayers. Our turgid tale begins in the screening room of Delasny Studios, where a group reviews films of it rampaging through L.A., snapping buildings like balsa wood before taking to the sky to combat the United States Air Force. The Stone Colossus is a modern spectacle. So how can Delasny Studios' latest television spectacular Star-Lords possibly compete? Even worse, how do they move the consarn thing from the middle of the studio lot where it fell? Does fantasy even have a place in a world full of monsters and superheroes? Big questions from an angry man, but who can blame him? Desperate to appease his boss, special effects whiz Bob O'Brien screens some new footage, which appears to show it attacking Washington, D.C. Only thing is, the menace never got that far. This footage was created using photocompositing, combining 2 separate images to create a convincing third. In a nutshell, Bob's solution is to reuse pre-existing footage of it to spice up the new show. Pretty forward thinking, really. Everyone is impressed but hack actor Grant Marshall, who feels upstaged by the artist's ingenuity. Delasny puts him in his place before stalking off, but Marshall has a big head of steam going and threatens both O'Brien and his fiancée, Miss Cummings. This worries the young secretary, and rightly so, as Marshall is soon scheming from the rafters. Unseen in the darkness, he detaches a heavy electrical ballast with the intention of frightening O'Brien below. The sound of the falling equipment draws the crew's attention, giving the special effects man just enough time to push Miss Cummings out of the way. O'Brien is not so lucky, struck squarely by the heavy ballast. Unseen, Marshall slinks off, leaving our hero pinned. Later in the hospital, he's given the heartbreaking news. He will never walk again, leading to a bit of drama between the young couple. It's pretty soap opera-y in a way that most Marvels were at the time, but O'Brien doesn't dwell on it, so why should we? He throws himself back into work at the studio, toiling intently to integrate the newsreel footage of it into the upcoming season of Star-Lords. That's some work ethic. Late into the night, O'Brien notes strange activity on the lot, a group of mysterious men in an unmarked truck attempting to steal the Colossus. This affects the troubled artist in the most unexpected of ways, his rage and impotence inexplicably shunting his consciousness into the once inert statue. With that, it lives again, striking back at the stunned thieves. However, they did not come empty-handed. Their leader, the dubious Dr. Vault, uses nerve gas to pacify it. How does nerve gas work on a stone statue animated by alien technology, you might ask? Well, to quote a wiser man, it would take a scientist to explain. Having carted the mammoth stone statue back to his oceanic cave lair somehow unnoticed, Vault explains to his cretinous colleague how he plans on transferring the consciousness from his own dying body into that of the statue. But how will he control the 100-foot Colossus? Fool! Vault thinks of every eventuality. The doc sets about using a matter condenser ray with the intention of shrinking it down to a more manageable 8 feet, but the process is interrupted when O'Brien's consciousness once again takes control. And it can talk now. Stuck at a mean 30 feet, the Titan turns its rage on Vault's lair, ripping apart the infernal machinery. Everyone heads for Z Hills, and once outside, Vault has the cavern entrance dynamited, trapping it inside. However, O'Brien is the thoughtful type and works to open a nearby sea lock. Escaping from the cavern, he confronts Vault and his men, rising from the churning sea. They flee in cars, but don't get far, with it following from above. Things go sideways when one of the cars smashes headlong into a resort hotel, causing the structure to burst into flames. You're going to want any hotel you stay at to have a monster safety rating of at least 6, or you're honestly taking your family's life into your own hands, no matter what the man at the desk says. The Colossus appears, rescuing children from the burning building. However, instead of sticking around for accolades, it attempts to run away. Well, points for trying, at least. Exhausted from the mental expenditure, O'Brien's consciousness returns to his mortal form, leaving it sprawled across the pier. Back in his body, the artist mulls over recent events, pondering just what's to come. Meanwhile, back at the waterfront, a gargoyle looks down upon the fallen Colossus. To the consternation of the resting birds, the stone statue abruptly rises from its place on the building and flies off to alert his master of this latest turn of events. Isabella and Ayers return for the next chapter 2 months later. After this helpful splash to get new readers caught up, we're thrown into this titanic 2-page spread featuring war on planet Hell. Welcome to Stonus 5, populated entirely by gargoyles. Worse still, they're feuding. Seems a rebellion has risen up against Granitor, the conquest-obsessed warlord who has decimated their planet. The rebel forces struggle to stop the king-sized conqueror, but easier said than done when Granitor's forces get the transporter working, beaming them all to Earth. Smash cut to Dorian Delasny, who learns the absentee Colossus has been returned to the studio lot. However, before the Hollywood exec can really blow his top, we shift focus to this enigmatic individual doing his best to appear indiscreet. You're green, buddy. You may need more than a hat and a trench coat. This is Magnor, and he's noticed immediately, not by studio security, but by Crustor and his band of invading gargoyles. Magnor, however, proves the better combatant, defeating his attackers but taking some damage in the process. No time for that now. He's got to warn the Earthlings of the invasion before it's too late. Directly above, O'Brien considers the slumbering Colossus, but his ruminations are interrupted by the emotional gropings of Miss Cummings. And while he still loves her, the special effects man is too preoccupied with thoughts of the stone giant to return her affections. Grant Marshall weighs in with his characteristic snark, but before O'Brien can jam a wheelchair spoke in his ass, the door bursts open. It's Magnor, here to warn them about Gorgola. You may remember Gorgola from his appearance in Where Monsters Dwell. Architectural student Dave Hartnell stumbles across Gorgola's palace while hiking in the Himalayas. It's clearly been a lonely existence, as Gorgola can't wait to tell his story. In the inimitable Marvel style, he recaps his origin. He and his kind leaving Stona's Five for Earth, only to take their places unnoticed on Earth's buildings, blending in with our pre-existing gargoyles. Seems this whole time Gorgola has been watching, waiting, but now he's been discovered. It's time to attack. Once he activates the signal, his troops will descend from their lofty perches, swooping down to subjugate these pathetic soft-skinned creatures. It will begin in the cities, rounding up humans like cattle, quashing any thought of revolution. They will destroy our infrastructure, rot our armies, bringing any resistance to its knees. Then they will come for our leaders, stripping them of their power, at last uniting them in the most ironic of fates: defeat. Gorgola throws the switch, initiating the attack. With that, he kicks back, confident in his success. But what's this? Why are all of the gargoyles here? And why do they look so angry? Well, it turns out Gorgola is a terrible boss, and the workers are revolting. They set upon the stone tyrant, beating him into submission. The gargoyles have learned a lot watching over us all these years. Turns out they're content to just hang out and be voyeurs, popping down occasionally for a hot dog or a drag off a discarded Winston. Problem is, Granitor and his troops are still faithful to the cause, and they're already here. They explode through the plate glass window, walloping Marshall and taking Ms. Cummings and O'Brien hostage. The noise and confusion prevent O'Brien from being able to make the mental jump into his stony better half, and he's carried bodily through the smoggy LA air. In spite of his legs not working so good, O'Brien manages a kick worthy of Bruce Lee, persuading the gargoyle to drop him. He plummets towards it, managing to transfer his consciousness in time to catch his own tumbling mortal form. After depositing his slumbering body back inside the office, the Colossus flees after his attackers. Unexpectedly, the battle has come to him. Granitor is here. It is unimpressed, and who could blame him? No one's intimidated by a guy who skips leg day. The Colossus hangs one on him, but Diane is still in danger. And here she is now, on top of the Capitol Records building. Before anyone can renegotiate their contract, it strikes, seizing Gorgola and hurling him across the skyline. His back turned, Granitor presses the attack, delivering a double axe-handle combo. Granitor deadlifts Colossus above his head, but before he can chuck him, it socks him in the mush before flipping him like a card table at senior game night. Unfortunately, there are thousands of gargoyles, something even his granite-hewn might cannot overcome. They make off with Diane, upping the stakes for next issue. The action begins with O'Brien, weakened from recent exertions, losing his grip on it. The Colossus struggles not to tumble from the Capitol Records building, rapidly descending the towering structure before reaching the street. Now spent, the Stone Titan collapses on a police cruiser, racking up yet another bill for Zelazny Studios. Speaking of, O'Brien wakes in the ruins of his ransacked office. Angered at his inability to stay in giant form, he struggles back into his wheelchair before having a revelation. The closer he is to the Colossus, the greater his control over it is. Now convinced of what he must do, O'Brien hooks a ride out to L.A. to reconnect with his stony pal. Meanwhile, Miss Cummings suffers at the hands of the malicious Granitor. Magnor protests, but the Green Gargoyle is outnumbered. All he can do is watch. You see, Granitor's transportation device has been reactivated, primed to bring even more gargoyles to Earth. Elsewhere, the vile Dr. Vault plots anew. Turns out he has an ace up his sleeve in the form of no less than Fin Fang Foom. His plan is to use the dragon to defeat it, upon which time he will transfer his own intellect into the immortal statue. A truncated retelling of Foom's origin tale follows, utilizing previously existing story pages, incorporating Jack Kirby artwork to bring Marvel's past, literally clawing its way into the present. The execution is a touch awkward, but suddenly this all feels like it's building to something. After all, Marvel had a lot of monsters in its back pocket, abandoned once their unique brand of superheroics caught on. If Spider-Man, Hulk, and Captain America could be household names, why not Orgo, Brutu, and Sprag, the Living Mountain? But something is wrong. Suddenly, Foom is no longer under Vault's control. Elsewhere, on the outskirts of L.A., O'Brien sights the Gargoyle army. Unable to wait any longer, he shifts his consciousness to the Colossus, to the alarm of his co-worker. However, there's no time for trivial concerns. Snapping the cables the helpless police have placed, attempting to restrain it, the stone giant rises into the air. The Colossus follows the cloud of gargoyles, and one can be forgiven for wondering, where are the Avengers and Fantastic Four while all this is going on? I get it. We're all busy, but an army of gargoyles swarming LA seems like it's worth at least sending a Quinjet to investigate. It encounters a strange aperture, one that's swarming with gargoyles. What follows is the equivalent of trying to swat a swarm of gnats with a newspaper, the Colossus doing his best to fight an army of wee attackers. Then Granitor gets into the ring a la Haystacks Calhoun, and the two begin whomping on one another. As if that wasn't enough, Granitor reveals his teleportation device, set to beam in even more stony combatants. Things are looking grim for old Earth, with Miss Cummings and Magnor desperately calling for reinforcements. And that's when the big green cavalry shows up. Although the ancient dragon doesn't know the combatants from Adam, Foom can somehow sense what side he must fight on, that of Earth. With that, he swoops onto the battlefield and begins kicking gargoyle tail. Granitor, in shock, takes his attention away from the Colossus, which proves his undoing. It swings for the bleachers, clobbering his stony foe before sending him flying. Granitor and his forces retreat, using the teleporter to escape back to Stonus 5. Determined to make this win stick, the Colossus stomps the teleportation device out of commission, the enemies of Earth vanishing with a soul-rending wail. Unfortunately, the lull in action has allowed Vault to retake control of Fin Fang Foom. At the same time, in a nearby hospital room, Bob O'Brien is pronounced dead? Hold on, folks, because we're in the home stretch now. The final issue begins with a bang as a mind-controlled Foom attacks the Living Colossus. This confuses it. A moment ago, the dragon was fighting alongside him. Why has he turned now? Also, Ploog! Just then, the cops show up, although what they expect to do is anybody's guess. Foom starts slapping their cars around, allowing it to slip away and investigate Professor Vault's old hideout. While the villain is long gone, the hidden location is an ideal place to leave it while Bob returns to his body, which is at the morgue. Sitting bolt upright, the special effects man's sudden revival shocks his co-worker, who's already had quite the day. Soon enough, a doctor confirms everyone's suspicions. Bob is alive, although he might fall into a coma at any time. And hey, it's Miss Cummings, recently liberated from the Gargoyle Army. There's a tearful reunion where lips are bitten and love is reaffirmed, a precursor to this recap of incidents regarding it only alluded to earlier. And while the art is unquestionably nice, it's really just filler before we get to the main event promised on the cover. But wait, here's two dour men smoking, studio head Zelazny clashing with troublesome star Grant Marshall. It's a weird dynamic, one meant to serve the ongoing story, although these two are nothing but secondary at this point. Meanwhile, a protest outside of Grumman's Theater sees a colorful crew of participants toting a papier-mâché dragon. Wonder what a real one would look like. Well, wonder no more, as Foom has returned. Vault drives the beast to wreak havoc on the city in a bid to draw the Colossus out. Of course, the cops show up first, although by now you think they'd know enough to call in sick. I don't care how much they're paying you. There's no being unstepped on by a dragon. Luckily, just then it arrives. Guess he's got a really long stride. With that, it's on like Donkey Kong, the king-size combatants taking turns slugging one another. Bet L.A. wishes it had taken out that monster insurance now. The pair fight it out in their own inimitable style. Being made of stone and probably not big on stretching exercises, Colossus is more of a bare-knuckle brawler, throwing some notable haymakers. Foom, conversely, exhibits some martial arts style combat, impressive for a creature in his weight class. Heck, I couldn't get my leg that high up if I tried. It is knocked backwards and then tackled head on, the tumbling twosome taking out a high rise. Talk about your urban renewal. Colossus grabs a light pole and the dragon follows suit. In the hands of a martial arts master like Foom, the lamppost is a deadly weapon, and he quickly disarms it, who he sends sprawling. The giant knocks a set of live wires down, with Foom inadvertently taking the brunt of the shock. Knocked flat, the Colossus presses the attack, bludgeoning the lizard with his granite fists. However, something in Foom's demeanor has changed. Once again, the beast has slipped the evil scientist's control. Taking its one-time opponent by the shoulder, Foom conveys information the only way he seems to know how, by drawing with one curved talon in the sand. The visage is unmistakable, that of the insidious Dr. Vault. With that, Foom departs, heading for greener pastures. And as for it, the Living Colossus, this story picked up again a few years later in Incredible Hulk 244, where the statue is ultimately smashed to pieces. This being comics, it eventually got better, although what he's up to now is anybody's guess. So there you have it. If you were a monster kid in the 1970s, this was some pretty exciting stuff. Pure wish fulfillment in the classic comic style, it was probably a surprise for those involved when it didn't take off. After all, it seems like a winning formula. There were dozens of monsters just waiting in the wings to be trotted out against our stone protagonist, but maybe the baddies weren't the issue. Ultimately, no matter how you draw it, a big, bald, stone-colored statue is exactly that. Without some distinctive features or characteristics, it was kind of boring, essentially an oversized Yul Brynner in his underpants. I'm sorry, Marvel. You're going to have to try a little harder. Thanks for tuning in. Going forward, we're going to step away from the weekly format, but don't worry, there's still lots of fun to come, so stay tuned. Until the next time, I am Jason Mink, and I'll see you at breakfast.